sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Okay. All right. Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Sabby Sabs podcast is also a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the JB and Sabby show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to kick things off with our special guest. You are going to get a big history lesson. First and foremost, let's show you what we are going to discuss tonight. A very interesting show. The theme is shit hit the fan. I don't know how else to put it when you hear these stories. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing Joe Rogan grills Kash Patel. Interesting how Kash is flipping on the Epstein story. We'll get into that. We're also going to discuss Alan Dershowitz says he's in danger. Oh no, what shall we do? We're also discussing, this one is getting a lot of backlash. Bari Sellers is not getting a break. Bari Sellers' comment gets huge backlash. We're going to get into that discussion. We're also discussing, if you have not seen what has been happening over the weekend, ICE raids in Los Angeles go very, very wrong. In other words, things really get crazy. We'll get into that. And last but not least, we're going to discuss this with our special guest. That gentleman there in the purple rectangle, that is Jim Jones. If you are not familiar with who Jim Jones was and the Jonestown massacre, we are going to get into that tonight. But we are talking about another side of this. Jim Jones used Black people. What happened in San Francisco? We're going to get into all of it. First and foremost, like the stream if you haven't done so. Let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. His name is Ken McCarthy. You have seen him here before. He loves history. So do I. He's the author of JFK and RFK's Secret Battle Against Zionist Extremism. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Welcome back, Ken.
Thanks for having me. It's always it's an honor to be on your show. I love watching it, and I'm really grateful to be on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, Ken, you reached out to me and I said, we have to have this conversation. I am somewhat familiar with who Jim Jones was, a little fuzzy on the Jonestown massacre, but I do remember hearing about it. You sent me this piece here, and I think this is important for people to see. Made in San Francisco, the Jonestown and official San Francisco, the untold story. And what I thought was interesting is this picture here. At a September 1976 testimonial dinner honoring Jim Jones, Willie Brown Jr. is at the far left and Jones is at the far right. So this is Willie Brown right here to the left. And this is Jim Jones all the way over here with the sunglasses on. He was known for wearing the sunglasses. So first and foremost, for the audience, the same Willie Brown that helped Kamala Harris climb the political ladder?
And Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi and the other one who I can't think of right now. But yeah, that's the same dude.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what exactly, the Jonestown massacre, you said there's more that goes into the story that a lot of people don't know about. Can we start from the beginning?
Okay. First of all, see, I'm 65, which means I was a teenager in the 70s when this happened, and I was in my 20s in the decade after. So I lived through the story when it was live, and I got to look at a lot of the analysis that came up afterwards. In the 70s, when you did a survey, a poll of people and asked them, do you recognize the name Jonestown? 98% of the respondees said yes. So everybody heard the name, but they got a very bad version of the story. So I'm going to We have a lot to cover here, so I'm going to go real quick. Everybody thinks it was a mass voluntary ending of life. Is that a way? Is that a good way to put it?
You can say that.
I hope that's safe, right? Because we have to be careful of the language we use. Right? Everybody thinks that, right? I don't know how aware people are of the story, but the main theme of Jonestown was, wow, all these people went to the jungle and ended up making themselves no longer living.
Right? That's what I heard. That's the story I was told.
And that's what they told everybody. And that's not what happened. Okay. The very first guy on the scene was the chief pathologist of the country of Guyana. He wrote a report which he presented to the grand jury of Guyana, because after all, it was a crime scene in Guyana. And he said, these people did not voluntarily go. They had needle marks in their backs, and some of them were ended with firearms. Okay. This is the chief pathologist. He had no horse. He had no dog in the race or horse in the race. He's a pathologist. He went and looked at the bodies. He was the first one there. That's what he said. So we've got a problem already. Second big problem is they say these people departed this earthly plane by taking something called cyanide. Well, the way that particular drug takes you out is really unpleasant. It basically interrupts the transport of oxygen in your body, and you don't go peacefully. You're all contorted. And if you look at the pictures, which are available on the internet, those people were laid down in rows and nobody was contorted at all. Then the US military came down. And the first thing they did was remove the IDs from every single body. Some of the IDs included medical-like bracelets. And those are visible in the original pictures of people that were no longer living. So they did everything they could to obscure who was there, and they wanted to make these medical ID bracelets go away. Then they packed the bodies, multiple bodies, to a box, let them sit in the sun for a couple of days. And we're talking about the tropics. You can imagine what happened. And then they sent them to Dover Air Force Base in New Jersey, at which point the equivalent in New Jersey of chief pathologist said, we got to see these bodies because they're in our state. Right? That's my job. I'm supposed to look. And the military said, you can't see them. So they basically let these bodies turn to, just decay. And that made sure that what was in their system was undetectable. They didn't even try to look. They just said, it looks like the cover story's true. They actually chose to do this. They, this and that and so on and so forth. The chief pathologist in Guyana who testified in front of the court down there, the grand jury, did not believe that. And the pathologist in New Jersey did not sign off on it. So this is a big problem. So now if we think logistics, how did about 900 to 1,000 people end up in the jungle in Guyana at all? I mean, that's kind of crazy. And you should know there were two tiers of people down there. There were the people who were not allowed to they were not allowed to leave the compound, and they were pretty much put to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. They were fed iron rations, hardly anything. They were brutalized if they had anything to say about how they didn't like they were being treated. And then there was another group that kind of ran things, and they came and went and did whatever they wanted. And it was so, apartheided that the local people in that region thought it was a compound of white people, because that's the only people they ever saw come to town. 90% of the people there were Black people. And
in Jonestown?
Oh, hell. Oh, my God. Yeah. That's the fundamental story. Yeah.
But why would
I know.
I'm just thinking to myself, like, why would we don't normally, Black people don't usually join cults. I'm just saying, like, not trying to be funny.
Well, yeah, careful. We'll talk about that a little bit. In fact, if I may take a little diversion, but it will kind of reinforce what I'm saying here. What's the significance of today, which happens to be June 8th? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm asking this to everybody who's listening. Today is the anniversary of the USS Liberty that was strafed and bombed by the Israelis in the Mediterranean Sea. This is the anniversary today. I want to ask everybody watching this, have you seen a word about this? Mainstream or alternative news? Nothing. Let's go even deeper. What was June 5th, everybody? And I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but this is my thing. This is what I'm into. That's why I know. June 5th was the anniversary of the assassination of Robert Kennedy Sr. June 5th, just a couple of days ago. Did you see anything in the news? Did the mainstream talk about it? Did I called them the $1 Million Podcasters, did they talk about it? Zero. Now think about it. JFK's name is in the news a lot because of his son. We've just spent 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is, hearing about these secret files that are going to come out. So he's been in the news twice. The thing people need to know about RFK, he was the point at the end of the spear in his brother's battle against what we call the deep state, the mafia, the CIA, and all that. And he paid the ultimate price for it. And his assassination was just 3 days ago, anniversary, and total silence. Now, let me give you another one, and this might blow a lot of people's minds. And this is obscure, but it shouldn't be. June 30th is coming up. What happened on June 30th? And I'm going to guess at least 99 out of 100 listeners to this or any show have no idea. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 knows. Alberta King, Martin Luther King's mother, was murdered in a church by a gunman on June 30th. How many people knew that his mother was killed after he was killed a couple of years later? And full circle, and you're talking about cults, he was killed by a young black man who was part of a cult, and a cult that also had a base in Guyana called Hilltown. This is history, guys. And so let's go deeper into what the heck was going on down there in Jonestown. One thing, they had a ton of psychoactive drugs. I think they found 15,000 doses of Thorazine. Now, Thorazine is like zombie drugs. It'll just knock you right out. And they had all kinds of drugs. So that's kind of weird. But let's talk about Jim Jones's life. So he grew up in Indiana. He became, I don't know, kind of like a crazy, one of these preachers that, fire and brimstone and, healing people. He'd palm a chicken liver in his hand and put it on you and pull it out. And he said, this is how he lived, right? This is how he made his living. His landlady said he was a gangster with a Bible. That's how she described him. He had a friend named Dan Mitrone in the same little town in Indiana, who was chief of police, and they were best buddies. And this is probably how Jones didn't go to jail for all the chicanery that he was involved in Indiana. Now, Mitrone, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, gets sent to Brazil. He gets hooked up, believe it or not, with the CIA, something called the International Association of Police. And basically it was a way for the CIA to train police departments in other countries we wanted to suppress dissent in. We would train the cops. And he became somehow, I don't know how, but he became a big deal in that. And he went to Brazil. Guess who also went to Brazil at the very same time? Jim Jones. He lived in a huge house. The embassy would deliver food, drive him around, take care of him. He lived large in Brazil, while his friend Dan Mitrone was also stationed in Brazil on behalf of the CIA. What's going on with this Jim Jones guy, right? Then he comes back with a pile of money. Somehow he made a pile of money in Brazil. I don't know how he did that. And he bought a compound in Ukiah, California. And it had guard towers, it had barbed wire, it had all kinds of things. And he was taking care of people, elderly people, children with disabilities, people that, society unfortunately does not take care of properly. And the business was, we'll take care of them for you. Just give us all their benefits. And so he built up quite a big enterprise doing that in Ukiah, California. He was very friendly with the local police, and he made sure that his inner circle members had jobs at the police dispatch. Okay. Very good job to have if you're trying to keep a lid on things. Someone calls in with a problem and it's your people answering the phone, and suddenly this problem's not a problem anymore. It doesn't get passed on. All right, now we're honing in on San Francisco. So he decides, I'm going to move to San Francisco now. Now, and the reason I called you or reached out to you via email is this is related to the topic that you were talking about, which was the destruction of Black neighborhoods in America. Okay. And, it's a multi-layered thing, and by the way, I got to ask this question too, for the audience. When did slavery end? Like everybody says, Emancipation Proclamation and, the amendment and, slavery did not end in this country effectively until World War II.
Yeah.
And, right, this, right?
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's one of those things like when we talk about when the schools were integrated as well too, like a lot of people say, integration, Plessy versus Ferguson was struck down. And then, because of Brown versus Board of Education. But a lot of people, from my experience, were not aware that even after that ruling, it still took years before some schools were like integrated, before it was pushed in place in certain places.
Yeah. And the way they did this in the bad old South was they had all these laws on vagrancy, loitering, being without visible means of support. So in certain places in the South, if you were a Black man and you were walking around during work hours, you would be pulled over by the sheriff and he'd ask where you were employed. And if you couldn't tell where you were employed, because maybe you were in between jobs or something, you went to jail on a vagrancy charge. And, a lot of guys didn't get out, and they would, they'd recharge them. They'd charge them for misbehavior while they were under imprisonment. And a lot of them ended up working in the coal mines in the Birmingham area in Alabama under essentially slave-like conditions. They were imprisoned. They were working for nothing. And so when World War II came around, and this is all going to fit together, I promise. When World War II came around, FDR said, wow, first of all, this is serious. We need every man on deck. So we and two, we can't have this loose thread hanging here because, the other side is going to point out that we're still enslaving people. And so
and technically still do with prisons because because of the 13th Amendment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But this didn't even have the thread of a justification. This is, you're just a free man and you have done nothing. And next thing you know, off you go, and your family may never see you again. So after the war, right, everybody comes back, and it's like, hey, we're free. The veterans benefits, great. Low mortgages, great for certain places, for new housing, and education. So luckily, a lot of people were able to take advantage of those educational benefits. I know I'm from the music world, and you'd be surprised how many great jazz musicians got to go to conservatory because when they got out of World War II, they had the VA benefits, and they were able to get a conservative. And this is a Latin guy, but Tito Puente, the great Tito Puente, I think everybody knows who he is. He got to go to Juilliard because he had served in the Navy. But there were so that was open in the North, right? But what wasn't open was buying new housing. And you know this, but I just want to make sure we got to cover everything because it leads to Jonestown, I promise. So there were all these, covenants, right? Well, this neighborhood, this development has a covenant. You have the right to a mortgage, but not here. But the other thing is all the unionized labor that built all those houses, right? Black people weren't given entry to the unions either. So they lost out on the nice union pay where you could be a young man, learn a trade, and get better and better and better and better over time. They also lost out on being able to buy houses. So where did they go? They went back home to the neighborhoods that were overcrowded because everyone else was expanding out. These neighborhoods couldn't expand. Well, every community depends on financing to develop itself, to develop its real estate. There's no exception. No one has the cash for a house or the cash to develop a whole community. There's always financing. So they redlined, right? So this is all that. In spite of all that, there were thriving Black communities, thriving Black, commercial zones. And one of them, now we're getting to San Francisco, was San Francisco. it was called, a lot of places out west were called the Harlem of the West, but San Francisco was called the Harlem of the West. And so what happened is, World War II came. World War II really played a lot of role in this, and Willie Brown's involved, so it's going to tie together, I promise. World War II came around. They took all the Japanese people away at bayonet point and put them in camps, and there was all this empty property, and there was a lot of need for people to work in the shipyards and work in the munitions factories during World War II. So a ton of people came in from Texas and Louisiana, and they all flooded into what's called they call it Western Addition. That's the formal name, but it's also called the Fillmore. And it blossomed, and there were Black-owned hotels, restaurants, cafes, everything. I mean, even a bowling alley. I mean, it was the biggest commercial district, African-American Black district west of the Mississippi. And then they decided they needed urban renewal, after this whole thing was built up. And so this took place in the 60s. And basically what they would do, first they sent in the health inspectors, and they started going around and writing, this building's terrible. We can't have this. This has to be torn down, And then they were going around and condemning properties. And then they were telling people, we'll give you a voucher so that you can get public housing. Just move out. Well, the public housing didn't come until 10, 15 years later. All right. So basically, and here's the thing, this is going to tie together. You're going to see. Basically, they devastated this community. They just destroyed. I mentioned a bowling alley before. Typically, they were supposed to give the property owners money. What do they call that? Eminent domain. But the bowling alley guy, they didn't make him an offer until they destroyed everything around him and all his business was gone. And they offered him 10 cents. But anyway, they devastated this. Now, here's the punchline. Where did Jim Jones bring his temple? In San Francisco, and plop it right down in the middle? The Fillmore. And what did he do? He took all these devastated people, a lot of them older people, and he said, I'll take care of you. Just sign over all your government checks to me. He took children, that were in difficulty. He became their guardians. He had a whole... Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how...
So basically, he took advantage of their demise.
Exactly. He turned it into a financial opportunity for himself. And now let's get into the San Francisco politics. He wired himself into San Francisco politics. He was made the head of the San Francisco Housing Commission while he was running his temple in San Francisco and ripping off and abusing all these people who'd been through misfortune. And that's, you destroy an entire large community, you're going to put a lot of people in desperate straits. And he just vacuum cleaned them all up and hooked, put his claws into their government benefits. So they would he became their guardians. So they'd sign over everything to him, and they'd get a mat on the floor and mush to eat. Okay. Yeah, this is true. And there's a lot of books about this. This is not just me. It just got written out of the history. He was friends with Moscone, the mayor. He was friends with Jerry Brown. If you go, that website, by the way, is my website. I built it in ancient times. I think I built it in 1998. So it's pretty primitive looking, but I've got all the photographs. And why did they like him? Because you'll appreciate this. He could get the vote out. He had all these people who he could push a button and they'd go out and they'd put out flyers, they'd put up signs, anything you wanted. So if you were a politician, and it happened to be the Democratic politicians of San Francisco, and one of them was Willie Brown. He was actually he originated in San Francisco. He ended up in Sacramento for a long time. Then he came back and was mayor. But he was a major figure in San Francisco. And you see that photograph, they were doing a testimonial for Jim Jones. What a great humanitarian he was. What a fantastic guy he was.
Just showing everybody again here, if you're just joining, this photograph here shows San Francisco, Willie Brown to the left here, and Jim Jones all the way here to the far right.
Are you able to scroll down?
Let's see. I have to go past the body part. Yeah,
because I'll
this
read
part here.
I have the quote that just go a little higher. Can you scroll up a little? Keep scrolling. Oop, we don't want to show those pictures, right? Because it's going to freak out the censors.
Yeah, you know how they are.
Let me go. I'll read it because that's. Hang on one second. Just take a second. I'll be right there.
Here it is.
Okay. Oh, I've just lost my. Okay, here's the quote from Willie Brown. And this is this, and we don't, I don't want to just hang Willie Brown only, but he was representative of the entire Democratic establishment in San Francisco in the 70s. Here's what he had to say about Willie Brown. I have had the great pleasure of knowing a leader with tremendous character and integrity. Reverend Jones is regarded among government officials, civic and religious leaders. He had a lot of religious leaders in his pocket too, and particularly the Black community and working class people, with utter respect for what he has done to upgrade the quality of life in our area and to bring greater health and well-being to thousands of poor, minority, and disadvantaged people. This is 1976. Now, shortly after this, Jones had to leave town because there were a lot of people watching. There was a group, and I'm going to have to put my glasses on here. There was a group called the Concerned Relatives. And when these people tried to speak up about what was happening to their relatives that were trapped into this thing, they were shamed, yelled at, screamed, called racists. I mean, everything, right? Who are the concerned relatives? Here's how they describe themselves. We are individuals having only one bond in common. Relatives isolate. Now, this is after Jones took everybody to Guyana. Relatives isolated in the Jonestown jungle encampment in Guyana, South America, under the total control of one man. We espouse no political. And they were said, "Oh, well, you're doing this because you're a Republican, right? You're complaining because you're a Republican." We espouse no political or religious viewpoint. Our only concern is for our families. We are bewildered. And this was a lawyer writing this on behalf of all kinds of people. We are bewildered and frightened by what is being done to them. Their human rights are being violated, and the fabric of our family life is being torn apart. Because sometimes you don't know what's happening with every family member you have. You kind of know they're out there somewhere, and then all of a sudden they're gone. It's like, where are they? I can't reach them. I can't talk to them. They're in Guyana. Are you kidding me? Then you're hearing reports back. So he was a factory of misery for hundreds and hundreds of people. Now, you have to ask the logistical question, how do you acquire a piece of land large enough for, it was about 900 people, more or less. How do you put up the housing? Where do you get the money from? How do you create the kitchen? Like you need a big industrial kitchen for all those people. How do you get them on planes and get them down there? Where did all this money come from? So at the point when he was in Ukiah, all of a sudden, some wealthy young people whose families had relations with banking, with the military, with intelligence agencies, suddenly glommed on because, he had this great public image, and they became his advisors. And they handled a lot of that, because there's a lot of bookkeeping and paperwork and stuff involved in running an organization that big. And they took care of everything for him. Those were the people that were allowed to travel from the encampment or the camp down in Guyana to the city and back and forth. Those were the guys who conveniently were not there when everybody went to another plane. They happened to be out of the camp that day. I mean, it's so sinister. So now here's the other terrible thing. 287 of those who, did not persist on this earthly plane were children. Okay, and it was the same deal. Families get in trouble. They can't take care of their children. Things are not good. All right, so the government agencies get involved, and of course Jones had implanted himself. By being a member of the Housing Commission, he was privy to everything that was going on. He knew the people that were running the welfare department. He knew the whole scene. He knew everybody that was in trouble. And they were very happy to sign people over to him because he was the good old Jim Jones. You follow? I mean, this is, and again, Democratic Party of San Francisco made all this possible. So here's a people were, because this sort of just happened, and like, the people in the federal government were not really sure. Some people weren't sure. I'm sure there were elements of the federal government. In fact, I'll tell you about a weird story in a second. So somebody who's down in the down there in Guyana sent this cable to the State Department. He went down to try to figure out what was going on, and he said, frankly, entire situation seems strange. This cable is on the website. Seems strange. Since children, for the most part, have only been in Guyana not more than 4 months, somebody had to apply for passports for them and allow them to travel. A separate question pertains to the children who have been awarded to Jones and other members of the People's Temple by the state of California. Presumably, courts there have agreed to their removal from state jurisdiction. I mean, think about this. They didn't just leave the county. They didn't just leave the state. They left the country.
Yeah.
And nobody seemed to know how they got down there. So let's take this full circle. Everybody's heard of Jonestown. Nobody's heard of this part of it unless you're, like a scholar of the subject and have really dug deep into it. Yeah. So going to Alberta King, she was murdered by a cult member who their belief was that that Black people, the true Israelis and everybody else, who's espousing Christianity is actually the devil. And this thing had a big following. In fact, there was a place in Guyana, just in this relative same vicinity as Jonestown, called Hilltown. And they had 5,000 people. And it was a mix of Black Americans and Guyanese people. And that guy was from Cleveland. The guy that was running that was from Cleveland. And this fellow here who shot Mrs. King, he was affiliated with this sort of mind virus. He was trying to his idea was he was going to kill as many civil rights leaders as he could because they were all the devil. Now, isn't that convenient if you're wanting to eliminate as many civil rights leaders as you can, if suddenly there's a cult of people who think civil rights leaders are the devil, So this is the real history of Guyana, of Jonestown. These people did not go willingly. Most of them were under, and that, by the way, there was a congressman, Leo Ryan, the only congressman in American history to have died in the line of duty. He had heard all this stuff. He was worried. He went down there. Look, by the way, probably people are listening to this going, this man's crazy. This thing can't possibly have happened, right? Look up Leo Ryan. He went down to check it out. He got murdered in the airport, right on the tarmac.
What was the purpose of this though? What would be the point of Jim Jones doing this?
Well, I think they were experimenting. They were experimenting with how can we remove Black people from the United States? How can we play around with various psychoactive drugs and keep people under our thumb? And I think Jim Jones, now remember, he and this is really important connection. He and Dan Mitrone from Indiana were best buddies back in Indiana. Mitrone ended up going from chief of police of the town he was in to a CIA guy. His level, his expertise. By the way, there's a movie about this in a book called State of Siege. State of Siege. You can, by the way, very suppressed movie. Good luck trying to find it, but look it up. They can't hide it entirely. You can at least find the title of it. And basically what Dan Mitrone did was he went around and taught police departments in South American countries, Brazil, Uruguay, how to torture people. That was his job. And he was under like some cover of, I'm really teaching people traffic control. I mean, it was insane. And the reason we know what he was doing is in Uruguay, he got kidnapped by the other side and they got him to confess. And basically the CIA was working with countries all over South America, teaching their police to, one thing they were teaching them was torture. Another thing they were teaching was to create incidents, right, to justify further repression. So while they were repressing people in this country, they were also actively helping other countries develop the instruments of repression in their countries too. And Jim Jones and Dan Mitrone just happened to be buddies. And the real thread that was left hanging loose is they both went to Brazil at the same time. Somehow this quack fake preacher ended up living in a mansion in Brazil, being taken care of by the U.S. Embassy at the very same time his buddy Dan Mitrone was down there teaching the Brazilians how to torture people. So that shows that it's possible, looks like, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, maybe it was a duck. And maybe he was being used because he had a talent. He had a talent for gathering people around him. He had a talent for, group hypnosis, like I don't know if people are aware of what that is, but you spend enough time listening to somebody pounding away day after day after day, and if you're not entirely strong, or even if you are, you might just fall under his sway. So they found a talented guy and they backed him. And I think what they wanted to find out is how effective could we be at pulling in people and keeping them under control using drugs, because there were a ton of drugs down in Jonestown. I mentioned before, I think 14,000 doses of Thorazine. There were only 900 people down there. What do they need 14,000 doses of Thorazine for? And remember, a lot of the people had medical bracelets around their wrists, which were cut off by the U.S. military, who also removed their IDs, and their bodies were left to do what bodies do in the heat. And then they were thrown multiple bodies into individual boxes, shipped back to Dover, and then a bunch of really bad pathologists who didn't know what the hell they were doing came up with they died. Meanwhile, remember, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I always wondered. I remember Waco, and I don't know if everybody remembers Waco, but I remember asking myself then, and I was, younger, but asking myself then, like, why would anybody why do people join these things, right? Like, why are you following this person? Like, David Koresh, I believe that was his name.
Yeah,
I was
Koresh,
thinking to myself, like, what parent would poison their own child? Like, you don't even know this guy. Like, why would you do this? Like, why would people do this? And so, I always had questions about Waco as well. And even when I look at these pictures, back at Jim Jones here, it's just, again, like, I didn't know as much about this. I had heard about, a little bit about the Jonestown massacre, but I always wonder, like, why do people just so willingly believe this one person that, like, they're willing to go to the extent to follow them? I never really understood that.
A lot of bad stuff happens under the name of religion, and thankfully, I think most ministers and priests are decent people. Well, I mean, let's look at priests, Catholic priests, in Boston, and the rest of the country. How did that happen? How on earth could that have gone on all over the country for decades and been covered up, right? So sometimes really bad stuff. When people are seeking spiritual connection and community connection and some kind of stability in their life, especially if they're going through hard times, they are extremely vulnerable, right? And if someone, they don't start, I'm sure it didn't start out, hey, I'm going to bring you to the jungle and work you to death. It started out, hey, we're all together, we're a community, it's us against them. That was a big theme in everything that Jones did. He was the good guy, and he was going to help everybody in this corrupt world, And then he started. Yeah, go ahead.
But basically, Willie Brown and the San Francisco Democratic Party basically co-signed this.
Absolutely.
So Willie Brown is even crazier than I thought he was like a scumbag earlier when I found out the whole, some of the other things that he's done in the past, like his whole connection with Kamala and all that type of stuff, and then him backtracking and saying, oh, I didn't help her career, but when he said he did help her and she wouldn't have gotten there without him and all that kind of stuff. Whatever their relationship was, it was obvious that there was a goal there to help promote her, help elevate her. But he just, I'm like, oh, he's a corrupt politician. But now, even here in this part, I'm like, he's more than just corrupt. He's an evil person.
Oh yeah. And a lot of the bogus, woke, progressive nonsense, the bad stuff, kind of originated in San Francisco with him. He was the master of it. And I'll give you an example. There's another website that I built back then about an election fraud that happened in San Francisco in 1997. And basically, the deal was in San Francisco, they have propositions so that the citizens are able to vote in a city on particular big deals. You don't leave everything up to the mayor. And this was a proposition to give the DiBartolo family, who owned the 49ers, basically $250 million free. Just give it to them. No obligation, no nothing, no give back to the community. Just give them money so that they can renovate Candlestick Park. Now, if you give them $250 million. Well, the citizens have to pay interest on that. So it ends up being $500 million. So San Francisco, a lot of people, believe it or not, there's a lot of neighborhoods, the Richmond District, Bayview Hunters Point, where people own their own houses. It seems like a big city, and when you're downtown, it's a city, but there's a lot of private homeowners in San Francisco. And they weren't into giving, they liked the 49ers and everything. They weren't into giving Edward DeBarlo and family a gift of $500 million. And so the polling wasn't going very well, right? It was about, they were going to lose by 10%, right? And so, I mean, it's just unbelievable what happened. So it's losing, you know, the way San Francisco votes is it's I forget how many precincts there are, but the closest precinct to City Hall, where the counting gets done, gets counted first. Then the next precinct, then the next, and they announce, hey, you know, precinct 1, here's the vote. Here, so it was losing. The furthest out precincts are Bayview Hunters Point and Excelsior. Excelsior is largely Asian, and it's literally, I mean, it's like families, 3 families living in a house. Everybody's got 3 jobs. They all just arrived from China. They're working hard to make it because this is their chance, right? They were not interested in giving a free gift to Edward DeBarlo, right? The neighborhood in Bayview Hunters Point is a Black neighborhood, and this was a neighborhood, a community. These were where the Fillmore Western Addition people got pushed to. The ones that were able to survive. They went out to Bayview Hunters Point, which was a super industrial area, lots of toxic waste, shipyards and everything, but they had their own houses. And they weren't into giving Edward DeBarlo money. However, Willie Brown managed to make it a racial issue. He said, oh, this stadium is going to be so good for the Black people of Bayview Hunters Point. Well, I went down there and I talked to the people there, and they were like, well, we're not real happy when there's a game because there's a ton of traffic. We're not happy if they're going to expand the roadways, which was the plan, because eminent domain, again, they already lost their homes once to eminent domain. We're not happy that there's going to be a big mall here because now the traffic's going to be endless. And so they were not. It was not true that the community was 100% behind it. However, Willie Brown kept banging the drum. That you're racist. You're talking against this because you hate Black people. He was the master of this way back going all the way back to the 60s. So here's the funny or not so funny thing. This thing's losing on every single count. It's a dead dog. Then suddenly everybody's waiting for the ballot boxes from Bayview Hunters Point and Excelsior. Those are the ones way out. It's the furthest from City Hall. They disappeared for hours. Where are they? And then they said, oh, well, you know, it's raining. And that slowed everything down. Are you kidding me? I was there. It wasn't like a monsoon, you know, maybe it was drizzling. Finally, the ballot boxes open up. The ballot boxes arrive. They count them. Wouldn't you know, it's 80 to 90% for the stadium. Wouldn't you know, it took the loser and the proposition won 50.01. You just needed a simple majority. Suddenly it won. And that was considered, that was cool. There was no problem. Now, there was some weird things going on. The guys that transported the ballot boxes happened to be clients of a nonprofit organization. And this nonprofit organization was in the business of rehabilitating people that had been convicted of criminal offenses and imprisoned. Most of them were drug dealers. A lot of them were drug dealers down in Bayview Hunters Point. They were the ones entrusted with going to the voting booths, taking the boxes, and transporting them to the voting place in City Hall. And these are the boxes that somehow disappeared for hours. And when they finally showed up, it had won. Now, statisticians and people that know math were saying this is what they are reporting happened is mathematically impossible. It's socially impossible because there is no way that those communities voted 80, 90% for this. But immediately the newspapers, it's good, don't look, it's fine, don't think twice. Now, it gets worse. We were doing investigations back then, and there was a lady, and it's on the website. Her name was Dolores Evans, And she was one of, everyone recognizes this person. She's an older lady. And whenever there's trouble, if there's a child that needs, a place to sleep for a couple of days, you send them to Dolores's house, and she takes care of everything. Everybody knows these kind of people in communities, right? She was that kind of person. She was also the head of the precinct, the voting precinct. So we brought in a group called Voting Integrity Project, and I don't know if they exist anymore, but they were tracking election scams all over the country. And when we showed them the data we had, they were here. They wanted to look. I'm not here in San Francisco anymore. I left, by the way, because you'll see why. So Dolores had agreed to be interviewed by their investigators. And the week that she agreed to be interviewed by their investigators, she and 5 children died in a fire. And they died by smoke inhalation. And the couch, they were upstairs, the couch was downstairs. The couch somehow caught fire and she died. Willie Brown Willie Brown never goes to Bayview Hunters Point. Okay, this is a guy that wears, $5,000 suits and he changes them every week. This is not a guy interested in poor Black people. He's interested in talking about poor Black people. He's not particularly interested in hanging out with them. But after this woman died, he went straight down there, stood out in front, pointed to the faulty wiring. What are you talking about? It was a couch that caught on fire. This thing stinks to high heavens. And by the way, I don't know if I'm going to put myself at risk here. I live far away from San Francisco now. There's no statute of limitations on murder or murder conspiracy. This is what happened.
So they were trapped. If they died by smoke inhalation and it was a couch that was on fire, that means they were trapped.
Well, they say that there was nothing obstructing them from leaving. It's possible, I really should have looked into this better, but I have a feeling if you're asleep and the smoke comes up there, because smoke inhalation is what kills a lot of people in fires. You don't get out in time. So you may even want to get out. You may get up, oh my God, the place is, and by the time you get to the door, your lungs are gone. And, as soon as your oxygen is gone, you're finished. You can't move. So smoke inhalation can kill people who are not trapped or locked in. So, and I had heard, and this is the one piece of speculation I've never heard. I had to confirm this and I haven't, but that somebody else had died the same way in this housing development. And she was a lady who was, quote, she was considered a snitch. In other words, she didn't like all the drug dealing that was going on down there in the public housing. She was reporting on people, and her couch caught fire, and she died of smoke inhalation. So, San Francisco is, it's like the city on the bay, the beautiful bridge, the bay, it's all beautiful. It is one freaking dark place. And I'm just scratching the surface. But this is what I was reporting on. I was one of the first people to really use the internet to do this kind of investigative reporting. And this was in the 90s. And I had this I didn't want to be an investigative reporter. I was more of an internet guy. And I had this naive idea that the reason, you're going to laugh, the reason the news media doesn't really tell the full story is they just don't have enough space for the newspaper. Right? So I'm like this naive, I'm totally still naive in some ways. So I thought, hey, I want to show them by example that the internet's wide open. You can just keep piling the story, just keep piling on. If anybody goes to my website, I think it's brasscheck.com/stadium. It was actually one of the first news blogs too, because this is going back to 1997. This is going back to the very, very early days. And I would just post a different article every day, and it ended up being hundreds of articles. And by the way, all the guys, nobody went to jail. So the way the election fraud finally shook out was Edward DeBartolo, the son of Edward DeBartolo Sr., who was a stone gangster. Some people believe he was the Italian version of Meyer Lansky. Little Eddie was given the 49ers. He got caught giving the former governor of Louisiana a suitcase with $400,000 in cash in it for another bribery scheme. And the FBI caught him in that. And that kind of put the kibosh finally on the whole stadium. That money never got, even though they supposedly won the election, that stadium the money never got transferred to the DeBartolos. And I think because of the research we did, it stunk so bad. Even Wall Street wouldn't underwrite the mortgage and everything. So And there were a lot of, and if you go to my website on that, you'll just see a lot of the people that were implicated in the fraud ended up going to jail for other stuff. Like one of the guys, I think he was the head of housing, public housing in San Francisco. He opened secret polling places in public housing without letting anybody know. But he told all the people that were, part of the, we got to have the money for Willie campaign, show up and vote. He never got prosecuted for that, but he went to prison for all the fraud he did when he was head of housing in Cleveland, right? And there were a whole bunch of people like that ended up going to jail for other stuff, but nobody ever got prosecuted for the election fraud, and nobody ever looked into this poor woman's death.
One more for you. This is crazy, Ken, but there's one more for you here. This is a good question. Thank you, Jay Tolbert. Was Feinstein associated with Jones in any way? I'm assuming they mean Dianne Feinstein.
I mean, I know that Willie Brown brought Feinstein into politics. She was a housewife, a wealthy housewife, and he brought him all in.
What did Willie do?
What didn't? I mean, I will say, like what is that? Sherlock Holmes, right? Sherlock Holmes's nemesis was a guy named Moriarty, and Moriarty somehow was secretly the greatest criminal mastermind of all time, right? But he was able to hide his tracks very well. And I have to admire people that do their job well. I mean, Willie Brown's a crook, and he never got so much as an indictment for anything. He was voted one of the most corrupt politicians in California when he was in the California Assembly. So it's not just me that thought this, right? And he's just slicker than, they called him Slick Willie, and highly intelligent man. You got to hand it to him. Very, very intelligent. And when you ask the question, what wasn't he involved in? That's a really good question, because you name it, and he had a hand in it. But I don't know if Feinstein and Jones, but basically anybody that was part of the San Francisco Democratic machine during the time that Jones had the Jonestown Temple in San Francisco was 100% on board with Jim Jones. Now, I said I was going to tell you a crazy story. So it's now the 1990s, right? This years later. And there's this weird character who's associated with Wired magazine. And we could get in, I mean, we don't have the hours it takes to talk about the weirdness of Wired, but this is one of the big figures at Wired. He dresses in white all the time. He's just a freak, intelligent freak, but he's a freak. So I'm walking down the street with him because I knew all these guys. And I'm walking down the street with him. And in the 1990s, he's still trying to sell me on what a great man Jim Jones was. This is not a lunatic. This is an employed guy that's articulate, published everywhere. So San Francisco is, how all this kind of crazy woke stuff has now taken over the country, and it's like real civil rights doesn't exist anymore. But if you've got some crazy cause, that's the most important thing on earth, and we're going to ignore real civil rights. That started in San Francisco, and Willie Brown was the captain of that. He was the expert on that, getting that going. I don't know. There must have been other people in other parts of the country that were good at it, but nobody was as good as him. So anyway, I told you this was going to be deep, and I was going to tie together a whole bunch of stuff. I hope I did it.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Again, guys, if you're not familiar with Jim Jones, this was him. And if you're not familiar with the Jonestown massacre, hopefully you've learned a little bit more here during this conversation. Ken, thank you so much for your time. Again, anything you want to plug before you go?
Let's never stop talking about what's going on in Gaza.
That's right.
I mean, like the kids that they didn't kill, and the kids, can I use that word? And the kids that didn't die as a result of the hospitals being bombed and no care for them, now they're trying to starve them to death. This is what's going on. I mean, all these things I'm talking about are their history. This is now. So we've got to remember, and we got to speak it up. We got to talk it up all the time. So that's my pitch.
All right. Thank you so much, Ken.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Ken McCarthy. You've seen him on here before. He was talking about his book last time he was here. We are going to keep the show rolling, ladies and gentlemen. We have a hell of a show, a lot of things to talk about today. If you have not seen what has been going on the past couple of days, it's been crazy, especially yesterday. Tonight's theme is shit hit the fan, because I honestly couldn't come up with anything else. And That's what these stories are describing, in my opinion. Like, basically shit hit the fan. If you haven't done so, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to hit that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And we are going to go to the comments and we'll dive right into the next stories. Mika says, I lived through the story too. I was in college then. Interesting. FM says Jim Jones took most of those drugs. Thank you, Roger. A follower of Black Israelites, MLK mom was unalive by. Thank you, Janice. Slavery is still legal through the penal system. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chip. Election integrity, 1, 2, 3. 1, paper ballots. 2, counted by hand. 3, in public. And that's how it happens in some other countries, too. Thank you, Lee Hub, for the super chat. Willie Brown is good, people. Sorry, he is a slick politician. He also didn't co-sign Jim Jones. He was fooled like everyone else. Newsom lost the San Francisco 49ers to San Jose. Interesting. Well, everyone has different opinions. I'm not a fan of Willie Brown. But we have so much else to get into, folks. Really quickly, though, I do want to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate you keeping the lights on. That rhythm didn't go well. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. Don't forget about the Sabsters. I think they're kind of cool. We also have Sabbies doing the damn thing. And we cannot forget members. All of their names are listed here, ladies and gentlemen. One day I will clean this up and make this even prettier. I just got to figure out how to do it. All their names are listed here. Thank you guys so much for your support. Love you, fam. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and jump into the next story because, like I said, it's crazy stuff. On Saturday, shit hit the fan in LA. Like, I don't know if you've seen the video footage. If you haven't, you're going to see it tonight. But things went crazy in LA on Saturday. So there have been ICE raids that happened Saturday in different cities across the country, not just Los Angeles. But the raids were heavily attacked in Los Angeles. And that's why we're going to focus on that particular city. I was very shocked to see that even Compton was in the mix of all of this. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Donald Trump has sent out ICE into sanctuary cities to arrest peoples. And in Los Angeles, it did not go well, even to the point where the National Guard was called in. Let's get into it. Nope, I don't know why the volume's not playing. That's weird. Eric, can you fix this really quick? Okay, I don't know why the volume's not playing. Let me take it out and bring it back. He's just going to check something really quick, you guys. In the meantime, Peter says, Sabby, I grew up in Los Angeles and lived there for 40 years. There has always been CBP and ICE raids. This is just a return to normal. Interesting. I've never even been to California, so I don't even know. I don't even know. So, let me unhide this here. I don't know what we're doing. Okay, let me see.
For mass deportations in Los Angeles. This was a scene in Paramount, California today when officers responded to a huge gathering as protesters took to the streets to demonstrate against federal immigration operations. Border Patrol says several arrests were made, and the White House says it is monitoring the situation.
You know what was interesting about this? And it says it's monitoring the situation. I mean, it's already past that point, obviously, at this point. Now, I do want to mention something because it wasn't just ICE patrol that was there. LAPD was also there working along with ICE. And that's going to be important when we get to the statement from Karen Bass, because Mayor Karen Bass did talk to the press yesterday while this was going on. Other people are also wondering, where is Gavin Newsom? He's the governor of the state. I mean, California has had a lot happening within the past 2 years, between the fires and then, of course, this, etc. But I want you just to pay attention to a couple of things. So again, you can see there were police. They were firing tear gas. We'll come in here. They also had on combat, like camouflage gear here.
Up against the protesters. It isn't immediately clear which agency these officers work for. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says ICE will, quote, continue to follow the law. And it wasn't just L.A. We also saw another standoff between protesters and authorities in New York City. Arrests were made there as well. Today's news comes one day after dozens of people were taken into custody across at least 3 locations in L.A. Our Steve Patterson is in Paramount, California for us. Steve, good evening. What are you seeing there now?
Jose, this all started this morning apparently across the street from a Home Depot, but the tension continues to this very moment. I'll step off and show you behind me. You can see LA County Sheriff's Department in full riot gear. We've seen flashbangs be deployed. We know tear gas canisters have gone off. We've seen debris in the streets. We know the FBI says they are looking for several people that they say threw rocks at vehicles conducting operations. This, of course, follows that day of tension, raids across LA and LA County, specifically dozens of arrests being made. We don't know how many arrests or injuries in this police action, but obviously the tension not dying down anytime soon. Jose.
Growing
Yeah, so that was mild compared to some of the other videos that I've seen on social media. I can't show everything because some of the things are just, you guys know how it is. Now, I want you to hear what Karen Bass had to say, right? Because something here just doesn't really add up to me. LA Mayor Karen Bass is speaking here to local news. Listen to what she says.
Well know is ICE initiated enforcement actions on several workplaces, and that created a sense of chaos and outrage and fear and terror because people are very worried as to what happened to their families. You also know that when ICE enters a city, that local officials are not notified that that is going to happen. And we
Pause. Hold on to that part right there where she said when ICE comes into the city, local officials are not notified. Again, this part right about here.
That when ICE enters a city, that local officials are not notified that that is going to happen. And we are left in the lurch responding spontaneously to something that had been planned, but we were not a part of the plans.
Mayor, we've heard a lot of talk about the National Guard coming here. We're wondering if you can give us an update on when we can expect them.
Well, I hope that they will not arrive at all. As I mentioned, I've been talking to people in the White House. I even talked to Tom Homan, who is responsible for this. And I believe that we will be able to work things out. We well know.
Okay. Now, it was important that you heard what she said in that statement there to the media, because again, it's her statement, not mine, that when ICE comes into the city, local officials are not notified. So let me ask you a question. If local officials were not notified when ICE comes into the city, why was the LAPD there? If you follow this account here, People's City Council for Los Angeles, here is video evidence the LAPD was not only securing the perimeter for ICE and HSI raids, they were also inside the facility during the operation. Lying ass LAPD said they were not involved in the immigration enforcement. What does this look like to you? So watch this video here, folks.
La migra, la policía, la misma porquería. We see you, LAPD.
There's a new update right here. Aquí está la policía. Ellos son los que estaban haciendo arrestos. They're working together. Otra vez, como les digo, la migra y la policía están trabajando juntos. Ya no son migra, ya no es migra, ahora es LAPD. No, que no te engañen que esta es ciudad santuaria. Estos mismos pinches puercos van y dicen en las reuniones comunitarias que ellos no van a trabajar con la migra, pero aquí están trabajando con la migra. Aquí están listos para empujarnos, pegarnos. Aquí le están dirigiendo qué le van a hacer a nosotros. La migra y la policía están trabajando juntos. Están dejando que se vaya toda la migra por atrás. Toda la migra por atrás, no le vayan a decir.
So you guys get the point here, right? So this is the LAPD. So Karen Bass told you that local officials aren't notified. Okay. The LAPD was there. The LAPD was notified. Now, people may say, well, maybe they didn't let the mayor know. Okay. Who can fire the police chief? The mayor. The mayor. So to say local officials didn't know would know, like the police knew because they were there. They were there. What Karen Bass has shown through her leadership as being mayor of LA is that she doesn't know what she's doing. That is what it is. She doesn't know what she's doing. It's not just this. It was the fires. There's been other incidents as well. Like, it kind of shows you like things are not going too well under her leadership. Now, she didn't bring ICE in, but still, how do you not know? By the way, this went on all day. This went on. Started seeing these videos early Saturday morning all the way through Saturday evening. This was going on all day. So even at that point, did you not contact the LAPD? Now, people may wonder, why is this an issue? It's an issue because apparently in the sanctuary cities, the police, the local police, is not allowed to intervene in these situations, right? You can even see that here because, again, if you follow this account, the People's City of Los Angeles, they are very, very well aware of the laws. And they said, F you, you're lying. Right here, LAPD collaborating with ICE. This is outside Ambiance Factory on East 15th Street and South Santa Fe Avenue. Another clear example of the LAPD and the city of Los Angeles collaborating with ICE and proving that the sanctuary city was always BS. And so for me, as someone, again, I'm in the Boston area, but I was living right in Boston during the time when they said, actually in Somerville at that point, when they said we're going to make these sanctuary cities. So there was Somerville, there was Cambridge, there was Boston, etc. But that is true. Like they cannot intervene if it's a sanctuary city. But clearly you do see there's intervention.
You're LAPD, you're not supposed to collaborate with ICE. Why are you collaborating with ICE? Come on, why are you collaborating with ICE? Can I tell you something? Why are you collaborating with ICE? You could talk to the supervisor. Why are you collaborating with ICE? Why are you collaborating with ICE?
I don't know, but this guy right here looks like one of those. I'm like, are you one of the cops from Super Troopers or something? Where is he? The guy with the mustache, that guy right there? Doesn't he look like he could be one of the cops from Super Troopers, right? So obviously, long story short, shit hit the fan in LA yesterday. And the people, so what people have to understand is, however you feel about this issue, right? We've talked about immigration on the show multiple times, and I brought on people with different views about this. The people in those communities in LA that showed up to the streets, and again, I don't think that everybody supports what they're doing. I can't say everyone in those communities support what they're doing. But for the people who did show up to those protests to speak out to basically challenge ICE coming in, these are people who kind of see it as though, hey, these individuals have been living in our community. They're a part of the community. They've been here for years, yada, yada, those types of things. But what was interesting to me is that I did not see the same type of energy or protest when this happened under Obama's presidency or when it happened under Biden's presidency. And so my thing is, and I've said this before, be consistent. Like I've complained about the genocide in Gaza under Biden. I complained about it under Donald Trump. It's interesting to me because it seems like when these deportations happen under Barack Obama or under Joe Biden, it almost feels like Democrats just fall back asleep. I remember covering the story about Haitians being whipped at the border under the Biden administration, and people got mad at me for covering that story as if I was supposed to just be quiet about it because Biden was in office, because a Democrat was president. If you look at the numbers, and there are different types of deportations, I think Trump's deportations have been more loud, right? Like he's more overt about it. Barack Obama and Biden weren't overt about it. They were covert about the deportations, but they were still doing it. If you look at the numbers, you'll see Barack Obama deported more people. Where were the protests? Where was that same type of energy? When Barack Obama built those cages at the border that Donald Trump used, and see, let me tell you something. Something that I've noticed that the Republican Party does, they capitalize on the mistakes that the Democratic Party makes. It's like if you're a sports team and you were going up against the unbeatable team, it's like, back when we still had Brady with the Patriots. And if you were like, I don't know, the Browns during that time, and you're going to play against the Patriots, like, okay, dude, we're not going to beat them. Like, they're unstoppable. If you go in with that mindset, it's like you're already defeated, right? Not thinking the Patriots could have a bad thing. But the teams who were able to like just kind of kill us and blow us out and stuff like that, and if they were an underdog at that time, what they did is they capitalized on the mistakes that Brady or other like members of defense made. So that's how they were able to win if they were an underdog team. The Republican Party does this. Barack Obama built the cages. Donald Trump came in and said, okay, the cages are already here, so we'll just put kids in them. You know what I mean? It's like Barack Obama protected the dreamers, but he never gave them a pathway to citizenship. And again, that is a problem. You can't just say, hey, we're putting this protection for you, but you never give them a pathway to actually become a citizen. So Trump gets in and he goes, oh, they protected those dreamers. Wait a minute. They never actually became citizens. That's what I'm saying. And so if you have that same energy, if you're out in the streets protesting right now and you got that same energy, this energy because you're upset because ICE is coming in and they're trying to deport people, why didn't you have that same energy when it happened under Obama and it happened under Biden? And that's what makes me feel like it's partisan. That's what I take issue with. If you wanted to if you were out there protesting for Gaza under Trump, but when the genocide started under Biden, you were like, shh, be quiet. Don't criticize them. Just give them a chance. Yeah, you're full of shit. That's the problem that I have. That's what I take issue with. You guys know I love a good protest next to the next dude. Okay. I love me a good protest. But my thing is the hypocrisy. Where was all of this energy under Biden and Obama? But shit did hit the fan, and apparently it made its way to Compton. It made its way to Compton. And this I was surprised by. Now, I don't know if everyone's familiar with this. Hold on. We'll get to the video in just a second. I've never been to LA, but I have seen this Dale's Donuts and so many things. I've seen it in movies. I've seen it in music videos. So I feel like it's iconic, even though I've never even been there. But I was shocked. There was a car on fire in Compton. Yeah. So that was Compton right there. And I want to add another thing. And again, I want to say something else. One of the things I noticed when you look at the people who were protesting, people were like, well, why aren't there more like Black people out there protesting, against ICE too? Well, you want me to be honest with you? I think that a lot of it has to do with, some of us who have had these experiences, who have tried to embrace and welcome, everybody and stuff like that. What we've come to find is that oftentimes, and people need to hear this, for those of you who did immigrate to the U.S. and kind of made it your mission not to associate with us, not to organize with us, not to build community with us, because for whatever reason. And then you look around and you see what's happening now and you're like, I don't understand what you people are like, where? How come there's no black people out there? That's why. Because you see what they doing to you been done to us. But when it was done to us, where were you? One thing I tell you is this, is like we don't forget. So right now, what you're seeing is a lot of black people. We're just like, you're not really gonna see us out there for that, for the most part. And that's sad, but it's something that these are things that need to change. These are things that, we have to improve on as a society. And what I want people to understand is that, for those who do come here, and I've met people through all walks of life, and I've actually had people who immigrated to the US that told me exactly that they were warned, do not collaborate, socialize, organize with Black people. Stay away from them. People have told me this to my face. And my whole thing is listen, the same people telling you that are the same people coming after you right now. Now, shit hit the fan in LA, so much to the point that they called in the National Guard. Check this out.
That President Trump ordered have started to arrive.
Eyewitness News reporter Amanda Palacios joins us live from downtown Los Angeles with the breaking update. Amanda.
Good morning. Yeah, we've already seen a large growing National Guard presence here in downtown LA. If you take a look behind me here, you can see troops are stationed along Alameda Street as another protest is expected to take place later today near City Hall. This follows President Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard members in response to a series of immigration protests across the city. This is new video from overnight showing the troops arrive. They stopped at City Hall after driving through Paramount, then ended up here at the Federal Building. Meantime, this follows another night of protest.
Let me pause here for a second. There's another thing I want to add to this. They were also talking about, I have to check and see if this happened yet, that they wanted to send in the Marines. And I got to say this, that's kind of a big no-no in this country, that you don't send in like the Marines and all this kind of thing. It's the idea that if you send them in as a police state or to act as the police, then it sends a message to the American people about the military. Although I would say that message has probably already been sent through other means, like war. But I think that, guys, we are living in interesting times. We've had protests nonstop since, big protests nonstop, I would say since 2016, if I remember correctly. If I'm wrong, let me know. But it's been back and forth. We had large protests under Trump in 2016. We had large protests under Biden, against the genocide, which continued under the Trump administration that we have right now. People have been taking it to the streets, for years over different issues, but for years. And I think Occupy, correct. I forgot about Occupy. Occupy Wall Street was under Obama as well. And I think if that says something, that people are just upset with the system, that people are fed up, whether you agree with the protest or not, I think people are screaming that things need to change. Something needs to change. One of the things I've said before about the immigration system is that nobody ever tried to fix this. None of the presidents since I've been alive have really made steps to speed up immigration, stop destroying countries, stop implementing coups in countries like Venezuela, stop stealing resources in these countries. Again, a lot of the people that leave, they're leaving trauma. They're leaving global disasters that have been committed by the United States and other countries in the West, to be honest with you. Haiti is a perfect example of that. A perfect example of that. Now, not everybody is coming here because of that, but there are a lot of people who do come here because of that. And if you talk to some people, they'll tell you most people don't want to leave their home. But we have destroyed so many countries economically through sanctions, stealing resources, so many things that the government, the US government, has done. And then people say, why are they coming here? But they don't look at what happened before they came here. And they're also not just coming here. They're also going to other countries in the West. They're going to European countries as well. They've also gone to other countries on their continent before they came here. That's the situation with Venezuela, which a lot of people don't understand. And Anya Parampil explained this so well in her book as well, is that some of the people that are coming from Venezuela aren't Venezuelan. They came from other countries in South America and they went to Venezuela before they even came here. So look, it's a global problem. It's a global issue. And I feel like our government isn't really trying to solve the issue. One image that was left, Tara Reid shared this. She said, sponsored by Soros and Son, is this picture right here. I don't know who took this picture, but it's interesting, huh? Yeah. The people, regardless how you feel about it, guys, the moral of the story is the people are fed up. The people have had enough. And you may not agree with every issue that people are protesting over, but I think people have just had it. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Shout out to CM, who's been a member for 14 months. Everyone in the chat is amazing and beautiful. Look at you, CM. Look at you working the room. William says, if 2028 didn't already look terrible for Newsom. Oh, yeah, Newsom is done. Clarissa says, Compton locals will have something to say, too. Interesting. Shout out to Chip. Oh, my gosh. I think I just heard somebody drop an F-bomb on the news, or was it a gas canister? It was probably the canister. Eartha says, ICE and police, one in the same. Thanks, Roger. Maybe Willie Brown got Bass elected too. Oh, that's something to look into. Thank you, Eric. Seeing other American descendants of slavery openly supporting ICE is ridiculous in its own right. I mean, I see ICE the same as the police. That's how I look at ICE. Thank you, Cuba. One of the objectives of the inverted totalitarianism system is to manipulate information, shape public opinion, and influence political discourse. Keep the people divided. Thank you, Cuba. Thank you, Michael. Sabby and FBAs love everyone. It should be mutual. And thank you, Money Making Bear. California is 42% Latino. Leaders don't bother those with no papers, really. It's different out here in the West than where you are. Interesting. That's interesting, Money Making Bear. I might have to do a California show. I don't know. California? Does California still know how to party? I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out, huh? Okay. This next story is laughable because Alan Dershowitz is a forever victim. Like, he's always painting. Everybody's always after him. He's always under attack. Oh, well, me. He's always the most oppressed person in the world. Jesus Christ. And Alan Dershowitz now again, recent interview here on Fox News, he is screaming that he's in danger. Danger, danger, danger. Wait until you hear why. Shit has hit the fan. Let's get into it, folks.
Joining us now with reaction, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, Fox News contributor Miranda Devine, and Project 21 Chairman Horace Cooper. Professor, let's start with you. This has got to get under your skin. This is very personal. You spent a lot of time at Harvard, and they have lost their way, my friend.
60 years at Harvard, and they're being let off easily. It's not that they tolerated anti-Semitism. They taught it. They taught it in the divinity school. They taught it in the public health school. That's the
in the divinity school
conclusion that the Harvard report reached. This man who killed these two wonderful young people was stimulated, incited by what is being taught at places like Harvard and Columbia. And
let's just pause right there. Yeah, so you see the exaggeration that's happening, right? So I told you they would do this, that Alan Dershowitz and others, that are pro-Israel, they would use these attacks, which I still question them. They would use these attacks as an excuse to say these attacks happened because of what was taught at Harvard, because of the protests, because people wore keffiyehs, because there was a Palestinian flag. That's why it happened. But they just happen to happen after the poll is released that the majority of Americans no longer support Israel. Didn't happen last year. Didn't happen the year before. Remember, the genocide has been going on since 2023. So all of this, you have to know, it's put together in this nice little neat package. And here comes Alan Dershowitz with the bow. This will be used to frame, I am the most oppressed person in the world. Everybody is after me. Look what happened. And the way that they are coming after Harvard, and Harvard ain't even my jam like that, okay? The way they are coming after Harvard, though, it's so obvious they are using Harvard as a scapegoat. Now, peep this, fam. You were at Harvard for 60 years, Alan Dershowitz, right? So in the 60 years that you were at Harvard prior to October 7th, if you say this is true, if this is true, that Harvard continued to practice anti-Semitism as you put it, if that is true, Alan Dershowitz, why the hell did you continue working there? Because he's emeritus now, right? Alan Dershowitz is a lawyer. He didn't have to stay at Harvard and teach as a professor. Like, he could have left a long time ago. If it was that bad, fam, why did you stay there? Why would you stay in a place that's so hateful, as you put it? Why would you stay in a place where you feel so oppressed, as you put it, with all the money and resources that Alan Dershowitz has? Why did you stay? He could have left at any time. If it was that bad, why did you stay? Don't forget, he represented Jeffrey Epstein. Alan Dershowitz is paid, okay? He making good money as a lawyer. He stayed because it wasn't as bad as he's saying it is. He stayed because the money was good and these things weren't happening. Let's continue with Forever the Victim.
There's blood on the hands of professors and students who are calling for a globalized intifada. What does a globalized intifada mean? The actual intifada, 4,000 innocent people were killed. They were blown up in buses and pizza parlors. And when people say globalize the intifada, what they're saying is kill Jews. And that's coming from Harvard, that's coming from Columbia, and it has to stop. And cutting off.
Pause right there. So do you see what's happening? Let's talk about what happened to one group, not talk about how this even came to be. Let's not talk about the Nakba. Let's not mention that. Let's not mention Israelis calling for a second Nakba. Let's not mention that at all, right? So these are the kind of things that I want people to pay attention to. Because when you're trying to make yourself look like the forever victim, you never mention other victims. You only mention yourself. Israel is in power. Palestinians are not in power. They don't own anything. Israel controls the air, the land, and the sea, which is exactly why they're tracking the flotilla right now that Greta Thunberg and other activists are on to try to deliver aid to people in Gaza. Israel controls everything. How are you the victim and you're the one in power? This Alan Dershowitz. And I told you they would take these attacks and the corporate media is going to run this into the ground over and over and over. And they're going to talk about this. By the way, when Black people are attacked, when Black people are gunned down, when we are gunned down by the police with our hands in the air, this same network, Fox News, don't give a damn. They don't have the same type of energy when black people are gunned down, when we're threatened by the police. They don't give a damn. They all have an agenda. And Alan Dershowitz contributes to that agenda. That's what this is all about.
Funds. Look, in 1935, Harvard was admitting Nazi students, Nazi faculty. They were sending faculty over to German universities. Wouldn't every liberal have been thrilled if the visas had been cut off from the Nazi students and if funding had been cut off? Well, you can't distinguish between that and what's going on today on college campuses. What's going
Harvard practiced eugenics against black people. Did you guys know that? But you won't hear him mention that, though. Because if he mentions that, like he's trying to make it seem like he had it so much harder. If he mentioned that, then that would mean that another group actually is oppressed and he is not. They don't talk about that. He ain't gonna talk about Harvard had slaves. Is he gonna mention that? No, not at all. This is actually insane. Ain't nothing happening to you. If it was so bad, you wouldn't have stayed there, Mr. Alan Dershowitz. The same guy who represented Jeffrey Epstein. Now, you sat up there and you represented a guy who you knowingly knew abused minors, trafficked minors, and you defended that person. I wonder why. Who did Epstein have connections with? You see what I mean? Israel was never coming back from this, man. Israel was never coming back from the genocide. Ever. You are done. People seen it all. Even people who didn't even know where Gaza was, they know now. People have seen it. And you going on to all these different talk shows. Oh my God, they're coming after me and yada, yada, yada. There are other reasons people are coming after you. I don't know. You mean to tell me nobody came after you or made any type of threats towards you when you represented Epstein? That never happened. Maybe people are coming after you. Maybe people are criticizing you because you're a piece of shit. Maybe that's the reason why.
on today on college campuses is what the Klan did in 1955 when they intimidated black students on campus. Now that the shoe is on the other foot and the victims of all this violence and discrimination are Jews, liberals can't simply say, oh my God, it's a matter of academic freedom. If it wasn't a matter of academic freedom in 1935 and 1955, then surely universities have an obligation not to foment and incentivize the kind of killings that we're going to see, and it's going to get worse. I have to go now and get security guards. I have been told by law enforcement officials that I am not safe because I am a highly visible pro-Israel supporter, and I have a target on my back, as do many other pro-Israel supporters.
Let me just pause here for a second and say something, right? First of all, you mean to tell me law enforcement officials approached you and told you you have a target on your back? Really? Does that mean that, I don't know, people contacted law enforcement and said that they were coming after Alan Dershowitz? Like, I don't get this at all. Second of all, how close is your relationship with law enforcement that they just pick up the phone and contact you and say, hey, just to let you know, people might be looking for you, boo? Really? Do you guys believe this? They contacted you or you contacted them? Go back to what he said here. Pay attention. Everybody feels sorry for me. Help.
In 1935 and 1955, then surely universities have an obligation not to foment and incentivize the kind of killings that we're going to see, and it's going to get worse. I have to go now and get security guards.
How does he know what's going to get worse? How does he know it's going to get worse? It almost sounds like he wants it to get worse to help increase support for Israel. That's what it sounds like to me. He got to go get security guards. You didn't have to have security when you represented Jeffrey Epstein? This all makes sense when I show you what he's what he's doing now, what he's asking Donald Trump to do. Wait till we get to that part. You didn't have to have security then? When you represented someone that had ties to Israeli intelligence and all these millionaires and billionaires and the Clintons and Donald Trump, you didn't have to get security then? When Epstein died, you didn't have to get security then? You only just so now need security?
Been told by law enforcement officials that I am not safe because I am a highly visible pro-Israel supporter and I have a target on my back, as do many other pro-Israel supporters.
So wait for it, because that's one part. Okay. Here's the other part. Wait till you see what he's trying to do right now. This is going to blow your mind. Alan Dershowitz urges pardon for Epstein Madam Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm not kidding. Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz has urged the Trump administration to consider a pardon or commutation for Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend and Madam Ghislaine Maxwell. Certainly, she should get a commutation. The sentence was way, way, way in excess of anything she was alleged to have done. She was in part a victim of Epstein. The fact that Epstein died made her a primary target and caused an excessive sentence to her. Some executive clemency is very much warranted in her case. I believe there will be a lot of people who would support some executive clemency for her. So let me ask you guys a question, right? Okay. Now, he's painting himself as the forever victim. But here he is advocating for the release of a person who created a lot of victims. Jeffrey Epstein didn't work alone. Ghislaine Maxwell was just as in on this as he was. She helped get the girls. She went and got them. She got them. And he says she should be set free. But he wants you to focus on Harvard University because they let people have protests. What? Alan Dershowitz protects corruption because Alan Dershowitz is corrupt. Alan Dershowitz protects the state of Israel partly because there's a lot of corruption there. And his relationship that he had also with Jeffrey Epstein. Israel is the one state, and CBS ran a news segment on this. Look it up. Israel is the one place where sex offenders, like people who have sexually assaulted people, can go live freely. They have a high number of them there. I wonder why. Think about that. And think about Epstein. And think about Israeli intelligence. And think about and put all the pieces together. Alan Dershowitz is no hero. Alan Dershowitz damn sure is not a saint. He is someone that protects corruption. And I find it very interesting that he's now trying to get Ghislaine Maxwell pardoned. That's what he's doing with his lawyership. Let's get her out after she captured those young girls. But he wants you to have more heat for Harvard because people had protest. A lot of these people are so corrupt, you guys. And that's what Alan Dershowitz protects. He protects corruption. If he cared about victims as much as he claims he does, now he wants people to have sympathy for him. Alan Dershowitz has no sympathy for these victims No sympathy for the women, the girls who were underage at the time. No sympathy for the way that they were abused, they were trafficked, etc. No sympathy for them. In fact, he wants one of the conspirators here, Ghislaine Maxwell, to be released from prison. Think about that for a second. This is how you know shit has officially hit the fan. Because now the attempt is so desperate that he has to go back on to Fox News and make it seem like he's more victimized than any other group. And I would disagree. I would say he is very much protected because you don't get to represent somebody who had this island where all these elites came in and used and abused these underage girls. You don't get to defend that person. And even after the person dies, you didn't have to have security, as you put it. Now you need it. He's very much protected. Let's get to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Roger. Ever, the Boston accent fully captured Sabby. Ever. Thank you, Clarissa. The Israel of the Bible is not the same Israel of today. Who placed them there? That goes back to, we talked about this before, but that goes back to the whole Zionist project, right? Like it was the British who made the decision that that was going to be the home. Skylar says, something tells me Alan Dershowitz should be in prison his damn self. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's get the comment on Rumble. Can't say you didn't believe it. Thank you, Goo. If I was Harvard, I would remove his emeritus status. Yeah, buddy, that would be a big one. He'd probably sue for that. He probably would. I think he would. I think he would sue. Okay. All right, guys, if you haven't done so, smash the like. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. Guys, okay, quick announcement, and we'll get to the other stories. I should be doing pretty good on time. We have been working on a documentary. I want to tell you guys about it. It's called Removed. We've gotten, I think, pretty much almost all the footage. There's one more footage that I want to go get myself, but I need a little bit of help. Again, you guys know I like asking for this stuff, but if you can help, I would appreciate it. And this is not something I'm going to dram like down your throats. I don't like when people do that shit to me. But Removed is the documentary. We have found an editor. He's been working on it, but we do need a little bit of help here with the funding. If you can, the goal is $5,000. It's going to cost more than that. It's going to cost probably a little over $10,000 for his work. But basically, I'm making a documentary titled Remove about gentrification in Boston. Eric and Corey have gathered great footage so far. We are now working with a professional editor, and he's doing a great job, but we need help with funds. If you can help, please donate. So that's the goal, guys, is $5,000. Again, he created this. He has skills that I don't have. He also has Adobe Suite, which I also don't fucking have. Adobe Suite's expensive, and then you have to pay for it every year. But he's been doing a good job. We meet every week, and I can't wait to show you guys what he's been putting together. But yeah, if you can help with that, I'll also send it out via my newsletter. But I'll also share it here for you guys as well. And then we'll hop on to the other stories. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Yeah, he's really good. I saw Eric said in the chat, he's a really good editor. Yeah, he is. I got lucky. I'll get the comment on Rumble, and then if we can go to part 2 for Tight VNC. Thank you. Thank you so much for the Rumble rant, Lewis. Love your show. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Okay, if we can go to part 2 on Tight VNC, this next story is a doozy. You guys are going to get a kick out of this shit. I'm cussing too much today. I'm sorry. And then, yes, Jim, I have. Jim said, Sabby, you've been hitting the gym. You look more fit. Yeah, I have. I've gained a lot of muscle. Lost fat, gained muscle. I changed my entire diet, like, to be honest with you. So, but thank you, Jim. Thank you. I'm going to teach people how to do it too. That'll be part of my mutual aid that I teach people. Chris said, no effing Adobe Suite. It's expensive. I don't understand why you can't just pay for it once, just buy it and that's it. I don't understand why Adobe Suite keeps making you pay for it every year. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Anyway, let's get into this crazy story. Okay. So peep this, fam. There's been something happening primarily within the Democratic Party where Black Democrats have been making this, I don't know, comparison here between what has happened with immigration and what happened with slavery. And Bari Sellers really stepped in it. He made a comment. It went viral on social media, and people are just really chewing him out. Like, they are eating Bakari alive. And honestly, I can't blame the folk. I can't blame the folks. But it didn't start with Bakari. I want to take you back to a time when the first time I heard someone say this, it was Simone Sanders. That was 7 years ago. And she said this on CNN. Listen, just pay attention, folks. It's very dangerous. And so I do like to try to educate everybody. For people who are not Black that are watching, I want to explain to you why this comparison is dangerous. Listen to this.
Individuals who were charged with separating these young people from their parents, how are they being trained, and were they in fact being trained? And what we've seen in transcripts from mothers and family members who have had their children ripped out of their arms at the border, it seems as though training is not taking place. And so I hope Senator Kamala Harris gets answers to her questions, but this is a cruel and unusual policy. And this is a policy that harkens back to what America did during the times of slavery, when they took children and they separated families from their mothers and fathers when folks were being sold off into slavery. So if we really want to be better, we better start walking the walk.
So, yeah, not the same thing. Not the same thing. Yes, there was children separation, at the border, but the separation from a child during slavery, when a child was taken from her parents, that child was sold to be a slave by another owner. Slaves were property. That was 7 years ago, Simone Sanders. I had to show you that because I want you to see it did not start with Bakari. But this is what Bakari is getting yelled at for. I said, what the hell did Bakari just say? Calling slavery immigration is dangerous. There's a huge difference between stealing people from their home and forcing them to do unpaid labor versus people who came here on their own and received paid labor. And I told people, I warned you, I was going to discuss this on Sunday. The conversation here is about healthcare. But he went there. He went there.
To make your vision of America work, we need more illegals who get more benefits. That's your version of America.
No, what I want from America is a place that was promised to us, Scott.
To the illegals?
Like you do. No, it was promised to us. It was promised to us, not us, me and you, black and white, brown. Scott, do you think that your family was born here? You weren't born here, Scott.
I was born in
First of all, where does your family come from? My family wasn't born here. My family was actually from Sierra Leone.
You're making a passionate argument for a country built on unfettered illegal immigration, and that is not anywhere near a politically popular position.
Our country is built on immigration, period.
What kind?
Period.
What kind?
Okay. Oh, and first of all, before we go to commercial, what kind? What kind of immigration was I brought here?
You're already in the hole. You sure you don't want to stop digging?
No, because it was slavery. That's not immigration.
Come on.
Well, okay.
Come on, what?
All right, there's a lot to be said.
Hold on. No, but you just can't say come on.
Let's go back and we're going to walk through this, folks. So again, the conversation here is about healthcare. That's what they were talking about. One of the things that they bring up is, well, you don't want, Scott said, do you want to give everybody healthcare? You guys want to give healthcare to people who are illegal immigrants, etc. And it's interesting that Bakari brings up, well, things for you and me as a black person and during this conversation about healthcare. But he doesn't even mention that this is the important part. when Bakari says in this discussion that he wants everybody to have health care, I want everybody to have health care. That's one thing I agree with him with, right? But what Bakari, he conveniently, nobody on this panel talked about why we don't have it. The first reason why. Now, obviously, everybody knows big pharma is a big part of this. We got that. We get it. We're good. But that wasn't the first reason. The first reason why we didn't have health care for everybody is because they didn't want Black people to have health care. I've shown the video about this multiple times on the show. Not one person, including the young woman named Kat, who was running for office, who's challenging an incumbent, not one person on this panel discussion brought that up. Now, why is that significant? Because they're talking about Medicaid, they're talking about Medicare, etc. Even when we bring up Social Security, the restrictions that you have on Medicare and Social Security are also for that same reason. Because see, the idea was that if we didn't have health insurance, we didn't have health care, we probably wouldn't even make it to be 65 to get the Medicare. It's the same reason why you have the restrictions on Social Security. So people have to educate themselves, and you got to pass this information on to other people. So what was interesting to me is that Bakari was saying, we got to fight for everybody and yada, yada. Great. Okay. If that's what you want to do, great. But not one person during this discussion mentions why we didn't have it. That's a failure. And I brought this out before. This is a failure from the progressive movement, not universal health care, because I support universal health care, but not going into the specifics of how they were trying to make it so that Black people would not have health care. That is very important. So we're going to walk through this again.
To make your vision of America work, we need more illegals who get more benefits. That's your version of America.
No, what I want from America is a place that was promised to us, Scott.
To the illegals?
Like you do. No, it was promised to us. It was promised to us, not us, me and you, Black and white, brown. Scott, do you think that your family was born here? You weren't born here, Scott.
I was born in
First of all, where does your family come from? My family wasn't born here. My family was actually from Sierra Leone.
You're making a passionate argument for a country built on unfettered illegal immigration, and that is not anywhere near a politically popular position.
Our country is built on immigration, period.
What kind?
Period.
First mistake from Bari Sellers. Our country is built on immigration. The country was built from the labor of slaves. That's what started it. It was built from the labor of slaves, which was free labor. That's what started the building of this country. Whether it was cotton, whether it was rice, whether it was rum in Rhode Island. Yes, Rhode Island at one point was the third largest for the slave trade. A lot of people in Rhode Island don't like to talk about that. They don't really like to get in that. Everybody mentions the South, but they conveniently kind of hush about Rhode Island. Definitely. Also, highly involved because of the rum. So they were bringing in rum at the ports at Rhode Island. South Carolina, primarily rice, also some cotton. North Carolina, cotton, etc. Tobacco. You guys get where I'm going. Anyway, that built the economy. Because the work was being done free. There was no pay. People weren't paid. Slaves weren't paid. They weren't allowed to read, write, weren't allowed to have education. And when we talk about Miss Simone Sanders, when you say that the children were taken away, why don't we talk a little bit more about how those children were taken away, what was done to those children? You're talking about even to the extent where in some cases they were taking the baby out of the womb brutally. For my females in the audience, when you go to the OBGYN, you know why you're able to do that and why those studies exist? Guess who they experimented on? Slaves with no anesthesia. And we're not going to get into the details of the instruments that are used, because I ain't trying to freak people out, especially the dudes who are watching, because some of the guys probably like, I don't want to know all that. But the women know what I'm talking about. Google it, and you'll see the instruments that they used on slaves back then. That's who they practiced on against their will. Then after slavery, when you talk about going into like Reconstruction and you talk about the Black Wall Streets, every time Black people built something, it was burned to the ground. If it wasn't burned to the ground, it was taken by eminent domain. If it wasn't taken by eminent domain, it's taken now currently through a process called gentrification. The process still continues, folks. Bakari Sellers is getting ratioed by everyone on social media because not only did he say this, but he said it to a white person. But this is the worst part of all.
What kind?
Okay. Oh, and first of all, before we go to commercial, what kind? What kind of immigration was I brought here?
You're already
with?
In the hole. You sure you don't want to stop digging?
No, because it was slavery. That's not immigration.
Come on.
No. And I'll explain why. He said slavery, that's not immigration. Here's why what Bakari Sellers said is so dangerous. When you say that slavery is immigration, you're diminishing what was done to slaves. First of all, slaves were property. When you immigrate to the country, there's a difference between coming here because you want to come here. And yeah, you got to work hard. You get a job, you probably be paid under the table. Let's face it, a lot of us knew we at some point knew somebody that was paid under the table or not on the books or whatever. Yeah, I'm not here to say that's not, it's easy. It's not easy, but it's not the same thing. When you come here, when you immigrate and come here to the US, especially if you have kids, guess what? Your kids can go to school. They can learn English at school. They can learn to read and write at school. I worked in the education system. I've seen it. So a lot of times the family members don't have to teach them because the teachers will teach them at school. Slaves weren't allowed to read and write. Do not make this comparison. Like, this really pissed me off. They weren't allowed to read and write. Whipped, beaten, stolen, worked for free. For people who immigrate here, don't get me wrong, most of the time they're not making minimum wage. They're working for a lot less in corporations like that because they want to pay low labor so that they can make more money for themselves. So always keep that in mind. But they're paid. Slaves weren't paid. And he represents South Carolina. Bakari Sellers knows better, damn it. He knows better. Who do you think, why do you think South Carolina, in particular Charleston, is so much known for its rice? Who do you think made the rice? Bakari Sellers at this point sounds like this clown. I just want to take you back to when Ben Carson said this. So I want you to tell me the difference between Ben Carson and Bakari Sellers right now. Because Ben Carson, Republican, Bakari Sellers, Democrat, both of them walking around saying crazy stuff like this.
There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less. That's what America is about. A land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less.
This was Ben Carson in 2017. So now we got Simone Sanders, Ben Carson, and Bakari Sellers saying this line. When you say statements like this, then you wonder why you have some of the schools that are saying, oh, we're just not going to talk about slavery anymore. We're not going to teach about that. Or we're just going to say it was about states' rights. We're not going to teach about that. Then you wonder why you have some of the schools saying this bullshit. When you have three well-known Black people making this statement, this is dangerous. Don't ever sit up there and sell that plight as something that was a choice, God damn it. Don't ever sit up here and do that. This is how low Bari Sellers and Simone Sanders have get. Stop it. I'm so sick of this mess, and I'm passing this message on to everybody. Do not compare slavery to immigration ever again. You can see the difference even here. I swear to God, we shouldn't even have to have this conversation in 2025. Now, this was in response to when Ben Carson said it. I'm waiting for Washington Post. I'm waiting for the article in response to Bari Sellers saying it. But you're probably not going to do that, right? All the people who were outraged at Ben Carson making this comment, I noticed a lot of the liberals are mad quiet. Slaves weren't immigrants, they were property. Why Ben Carson's ahistorical speech matters. Now you got Bakari Sellers, add him to this list. Were enslaved Africans immigrants to the United States? And they go on to talk about what Ben Carson said here, which I just played. Carson's impulse to homogenize our diverse origins lumps everyone together without making important distinctions about the different pathways that dictated people's arrivals. The conditions under which individuals and groups came here on their own accord or were brought here against their will have had monumental consequences for our life, chances, and the evolution of our rights as citizens. Slaves were chattel. Slavery was a violent system of conquest and domination. Africans were kidnapped in the interior of the continent, marched to the coastline, and packed in vessels like inanimate cargo. Some never left the ships alive because of inhospitable conditions on board. The Middle Passage, as it was called, was a deeply alienating journey into hell. There were one-way voyages with no chance of return. And that is another part. Even when we get into the deportations, this is another thing why I do not like this comparison. They have a chance to return. Slaves did not. Not to mention the number of slaves that were thrown off the boats if they got sick. Not the same thing. Again, we got Democrats saying this now. Why are liberals so quiet? If you were vocal under Ben Carson, why are you so quiet now? Why are you so quiet now? 12 million captives were taken to markets in the new settler colonies in North and South America and the Caribbean islands to be sold to the highest bidders, to toil on farms and plantations, in factories and private homes. Goes on and on and on. One of the things that you'll see in the documentary that we're doing as well is you're going to find out about what happened with Beacon Hill. You know, a lot of people come here to Boston, especially if you come here as a tourist. And if you come here as a tourist, you are going to see Beacon Hill at some point or another, duck tour, whatever. And a lot of people don't know that that was a safe haven for slaves that escaped, was Beacon Hill. That was a Black neighborhood. Now it's not. Just another example. Bakari Sellers should be embarrassed, but he's not. No one on that panel pushed back on what he said. But if you look on social media, a lot of people are pushing back. Because shit hit the fan. Let's go to some of the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Then we have one more story for you. Some more fan apparently happening here. Thank you, Roger Meadows. Bakari is not Friedman, question mark. I don't know. He's from South Carolina. So I don't know. Thank you, Courtney. They took slave babies out of the womb and even fed them to alligators. Yes, ma'am. Teresa, thank you. GM is right where she belongs. No release. Thank you, House 12. Hope they have the same smoke for Bari Sellers they had for Kanye West when he said slavery was a choice. Exactly. Aunt Shawnee says they want to wipe out the history of slavery in this country because they don't want to take accountability for what they did to other human beings and the wickedness of the treatment they did to our, I think you meant to put probably ancestors after that. Yeah. It's crazy, guys. It's crazy, folks. We have one more, man. Oh my God. This one's quite rich. So Joe Rogan interviewed Kash Patel, and Kash Patel, was very vocal about, Epstein and corruption and let's go after the deep state before he was handed the FBI, position for the Trump administration. But since then, he's behaving just like those who came before him. He sat there across from Joe Rogan and basically lied to his face. I think we all know better than this as people. Kash Patel tells you that Epstein did not unalive himself in another interview with Fox News. And then during this conversation with Joe Rogan, Kash Patel now proceeds to tell people that there are no elites on video. None. Check it out for yourself.
Because I know it's on people's minds. Epstein, right? The reason people are pissed off about that is the same thing, right? 20 years ago or whenever it was, 2006, 7, 8, Epstein gets his sweetheart plea deal, right?
Right.
After committing the most horrific crimes on planet Earth, right? I wasn't in power there. I wasn't in place there. I had, nothing to do with it. But people were rightfully pissed. I mean, this guy was committing the most grotesque acts you can against children. And the media spins up about it. Many in the media protected him. Why? Because of his relationships, who he knew, who his bankers were, who his colleagues were, who was on the island and stuff like that. Some pretty powerful human beings. And so when you peel back the layer and then what happened? The Trump administration, the last go around, decided, no, we're not going to let that go. We're going to investigate him.
Okay, so now this is his part of him trying to make you, oh, look, we're going in there. We're going to get that information, right? So he's trying to reaffirm that. I just want to remind everybody that the Virgin Islands, in my opinion, did not get their just due for what they're owed for Jeffrey Epstein, for the damage that he did in the Virgin Islands. The little bit of chump change that was given to them, in my opinion, was not enough. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like there was a reputation damage there, and I don't think they got enough. So Kash Patel proceeds to explain to Joe that there's nothing there. Nothing there.
Right? They charge him, they indict him, and he's awaiting trial. And I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion of this. Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think...
Yes. It depends on who told you to do what information is there. Again, Elon Musk kind of let the cat out the bag, but I think a lot of us knew that anyway. Elon Musk was just saying it so himself. He said, the reason why you're not seeing the Epstein files is because Donald Trump is on the list. And he ain't alone, and we had heard about this before a couple of years ago. Yes, Kash, we would think that you would lie to protect people. I want to be very clear here. Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan, they're not doing anything that they're not allowed to do. Because I see a lot of people on social media like attacking him and Dan and Pam Bondi, but they're not saying anything to Donald Trump. Pam Bondi, Dan, and Kash are doing exactly what they are allowed to do. If Donald Trump had a problem with what they were doing, he would get rid of them. He would fire them, just like he fired people during his first administration. Something for people to think about. Think about it.
We would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on. But the problem is there's been like 15 years of people coming in and creating fictions about this that doesn't exist. Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you?
Yes. See, let me tell you how he put his foot in his mouth and how he kind of embarrassed himself. Don't forget, Pam Bondi issued a public statement prior to Kash Patel and Dan's interview. She said, there are a lot of tapes. We have the tapes. We've seen the tapes. Am I imagining this? Do we all not remember Pam Bondi making that statement to the press that we have the tapes? Yes, Kash. Yes.
If it existed, I'm working my ass off along with the leadership at the Bureau and DOJ to get you what we're allowed to give you. And you're going to get the video of the cell and you're going to see for yourself. And we will never be able to convince everyone.
Okay, let's get into that. So what did you think before you got into office? Did you think that Epstein was murdered?
No.
No suspicion at all of it?
But I have a different background, right?
Right.
So I was a public defender back in the day. I used to spend a lot of time in jails and a lot of time in segregated housing units, SHUs as we call them, right? And so, and I've known people that have committed suicide in these cells. And I know how you get in, how you get out, who works the system. And so the way, based on public information at the time, that he ended up, the pictures and him hanging himself, I was like, yeah, that guy killed himself.
So let me just point out something that he said here. The pictures, right? Public information. So you're a public defender and you're only relying on the public information. You were a public defender and you're only relying on the public information. Is that not problematic to everybody? Because see, a public defender would have to go a little bit deeper and look for more information, the information that the public does not have. So, in fact, this whole mentioning of you being a public defender and you know how people get in and out of these cells and stuff, that actually makes me question you a little bit more. Makes me look at you a little bit stronger, honey.
There's just no way that you could have run an op and had people go into that cell and not have any video of it and not have any people come out and say, hey, yeah, I saw that guy. He shouldn't have been there, the guard or this guy. There's just no access points into places like this in the detention center he was in, which I've been in.
So
what guard? The camera was off. There's no camera. No camera. How do we know? How do we know? We don't know. There's no camera footage of this.
correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was told, what I'd read, was that the guards were not paying attention or were sleeping.
Well,
right?
And in short order, you'll see it.
Is that correct?
Well, it's hard to surmise that from a video, right? Like, where they and look, do guards doze off on the night shift? Yeah. But no one can get in to the cell. And if they had gotten in to the cell, you would see it.
But we were told
the camera was off.
That the cameras were down.
Well, I don't know who said that.
But that was in the news.
We're giving you all the footage we have.
Let me just stop here for a second. Let me stop here, right? See, I think, again, Kash is not paying attention to what has been said. Does he not remember the conversation that Dan Bongino just had recently with Fox News when he said, well, we have the video, we'll show the video. Well, obviously not the video of him doing the act because the camera was off. Does he not remember Dan saying this? Hello? Earth to Cash? Am I imagining things? Anybody? Okay. I'm just making sure I'm not losing it.
So why wasn't that released like immediately? Why did this speculation escalate?
I think you'd have to ask whoever the attorney general back then was, Bill Barr.
Did you ever see, do you remember that HBO autopsy show? Dr. Michael Baden, he's a famous forensic
I don't think I've
scientist. So he's a pathologist, and he reviewed the case, and it was his determination that it was a homicide because of the way his neck was broken. And what he said was it was indicative of a ligature strangulation, and it was because of the positioning on the neck where the marks were, that it wasn't indicative of someone hanging by their weight, which had been higher on the chin. And there's a specific break of the bones and the vertebrae that's consistent with someone who is just strangled to death.
I haven't seen it. I'll definitely take a look at it because that's part of my job.
You haven't seen that?
The report on that? No, I haven't looked at that.
But they have everything, though. According to Cash, they have everything. They know for certain these things did not happen.
Did you see any? Was there any other autopsy done other than the official one?
Not to my knowledge, but if there was, you'll get it, and that's what we're doing.
See if you can find that Dr. Michael Baden thing.
Yeah. No,
Did you remember that show, the HBO show?
No.
Pretty cool show.
Yeah.
So this guy, Dr. Michael Baden, he had a long career of catching murderers, exhuming bodies, finding trace amounts of poisons, different kinds of things. And it was a crazy show, like all these wild ways.
Well, I love watching shows, and I spend a lot of time on planes. So.
Yeah, it was an old show. It was
Okay.
a show like from the early 2000s, I believe. But this guy was like, this very well-respected forensic scientist who would analyze these bodies, and it was his determination that he was murdered.
Yeah. And my job, going back to the core of what I've been doing since I studied Russiagate, was to get, and is to get everybody the information.
When did you get here, Epstein?
We have to fast forward through that part just because of, you guys know how YouTube is. But we can get to this part right about here about the cameras.
Jail CCTV erased by technical errors. Whoopsies.
Yeah.
But you see how anybody on the outside, this is like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
For something. Can you pull that article up so we can read what it says, Jamie? U.S. prosecutor said the jail mistakenly saved footage from the wrong cell. Sorry. Epstein, a convicted sex offender, first tried to kill himself in July last year and hanged himself in jail.
Hang on.
Yep.
Reread that line.
That he first tried to kill himself in July of last year. Yeah.
How much of the American public do you think knows that?
I didn't know that until right now.
There you go.
Maybe I heard it and forgot. Did you ever hear it, Jamie?
Well, that's why he was on Suicide Watch, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So that proves my point even more. If he tried to do it before, but was unsuccessful, somebody can say, oh, we turn off the cameras. We make sure it happens this time. Like what? Am I alone here? I sincerely hope I'm not alone. Now there's one more part. There's one more part I want to show you because you can watch the full thing later on. And that is, Eric, can we pull up the Twitter? I want to show you guys the clip that I shared on Twitter because here we go. Okay. Watch this, guys. Because there was something that I noticed and it does not make any sense whatsoever. Let's see. Pull in here. Okay, I found it. So we're going to pull this up, right? Let me show you the Epstein part. The other part that he mentioned. Here it is. Okay. This part.
Everything we can. And people have to remember, we're not going to re-victimize women. We're not going to put that shit back out there. It's not happening because then he wins. Not doing it.
Let's rewind back. Let's listen to this very closely. Watch this.
Again, we're going to give you everything we can. And people have to remember, we're not going to re-victimize women. We're not going to put that shit back out there. It's not happening, because then he wins. Not doing it. You want to hate me for it? Fine. Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy or gal committing felonies on an island and I'm in charge, don't you think you'd see it?
If you have access to it.
If I have it. Period.
Right.
If I have it. If I have it.
So
where else would it be?
Right. If you have it.
Right.
But you
pay attention to what he said again about the video. Listen.
Or fine. Again, logical play out. If there was a video of some guy or gal committing felonies on an island and I'm in charge, don't you think you'd see it?
Guys, I have to mention this. Don't forget Epstein's home was raided once before. Remember the Palm Beach? Remember the Palm Beach? This was I think around 2008, right? Like there was video then. Go back, look it up. There was videos then. Right? So now he's trying to allude to basically like there's no videos. But videos of certain people. Listen to this.
If you have access to it.
If I have it. Period.
Right.
If I have it. If I have it.
So
where else would it be?
Guys, they already had it. The FBI already had it. Let me make something very clear. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? What was some of the things that were shown in court? And some of the images, there were images in court. There was video. Am I imagining? Let's all come together. Don't forget, if there were no video, if there were no images, Ghislaine Maxwell would not be in prison. She wouldn't be in prison just based on hearsay. A little bit more here.
Right. If you have it.
Right.
But you can't say that you have it.
No, we're giving you everything we have.
So far.
Everything we have so far is.
Have you guys gone over all the video that's available?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. That's what takes so much damn time.
Right.
And
is there video from the island?
Not of what you want. The people out there have filled the void with can't wait to see X, Y, or Z.
Right, speculation.
And I'm like, here's the other thing I've been asking for, right? Openly. If you have information on this, call us.
You guys don't believe this, right?
Tell us. The best resource we have is the American people in the world.
So that is Kash Patel telling you that they've gone through all the video. So what they're trying to, let me make it very clear. He's like, oh, not videos of what you guys want. What he's basically trying to tell you is, no, you're not going to see those videos because of who's in the videos. He's trying to make you believe that there are no big time, elite, wealthy, important people that are in those videos. So let's put two and two together. We know damn well there ain't no poor people who was trafficking people to Jeffrey Epstein. We know damn well none of these clients were poor or working class or even middle class. So let's use our brain. Kash Patel is really trying to get you to believe that what you think is out there is not out there. None of these big time people are out there. Who else is paying for people who were trafficked? Who does Jeffrey Epstein, who did he hang out with? Billionaires don't go hanging out with poor people unless they trying to use them for some shit. And that's where he got the girls from. Ghislaine went and recruited underage girls that were either from broken homes, needed the money, were having some type of financial struggle. That's who she recruited. The clients were never poor. The clients have money. Billionaires don't just invite like someone working at McDonald's, hey, to come to their island and pay for someone. can't believe, and listen, here's the thing though. A lot of people just pointing fingers at Kash and Pam Bondi. They are doing exactly what Donald Trump is allowing them to do. Now I'll take you back to a time when Kash Patel, you could do the comparison. Let's compare 2023 to 2025. Because see, when Biden was in office, he had a lot to say. And now that he's actually with the Trump administration, you see the change of tune.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right?
And now you see Kash Patel not trying to release any names.
I've said it. Dan Bongino said it. We've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion of this. Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed?
Yes. They think that we are so stupid. Read the comments for that interview. Shit has definitely hit the fan. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Miss Richie. Kash Patel used to be a frequent guest on Stu Peters' show and would explicitly say he 100% believes Epstein was killed. The Oracle said Kash is trying to prepare people for the release of the tapes that are going to be underwhelming, inconsequential, and inconclusive. There you go. Thank you, Miss Sparkles. Go look at Lex Wexner for a start. There you go. The creator of Victoria's Secret. Yes. HMM, can you put protein powder in Greek yogurt? Legitimately asking, has anyone tried? Yes. I do it for desserts. I made you can make like a low fat cheesecake bowl. I did it with Oreo. You can do it with Oreo, or you can do it with strawberry cheesecake bowl. And what we do is we use Greek yogurt and protein powder and that Jell-O pudding cheesecake packet, which is like 15 calories. Anyway, there's other things I can get into this some other time, but it tastes just like cheesecake. Way less calories and high protein. Yeah, that's one of my little things. One of my little workshops I'm going to do for mutual aid is just showing people some of the little cheats that I use to get high protein and less calories, like trying to recreate some of the meals that I really like, but they're high calorie, and recreating them in a way that it's low calorie, but high protein. I'm going to show you guys how to do that and how I do that. Yeah, I do too, CM. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. But Gail says, was there someone that said that there were Mossad war plans on that island as well? I think someone did mention that. But CM, yeah, I like those too. The overnight oats, those are good. Those are great for something like just to, grab out the fridge in the morning and just take it with you on the way to work. Just open the fridge, you just grab it and take it with you. That's what I like about those two as well. Let's get the comment on Rockfin. All right. Thank you so much, Dave, for the tip on Rockfin. Thanks for more infos here, Sabby. You are welcome. All right, guys, that is it for me, fam. I will see you guys live again Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. Other than that, guys, stay cool. Don't be a fool. Have a good night. Oh, thank you, Natalie. Do you have a mutual aid playlist? Sabby missed them. It's on the mutual aid workshops I don't put on YouTube. That is a private thing, Zoom thing, and it's weird because you have to get everyone's permission to even put that on there. It's weird like that if you're using Zoom. So I don't put those on YouTube, but I'm going to keep doing those mutual aid workshops. I've just been busy right now with the documentary. But other things you can kind of see is the playlist called On the Ground Coverage. You can see some of the mutual aid stuff there too. Some of the things that we did, but the workshops, no. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that with like permissions and stuff. So yeah. Oh, and thank you, M. Williams. We were never set free, but sold to the government, i.e., social security number like prison number. That's a good point. And I think I missed one. I'm sorry. Oh, Rosemary, thank you. Who is that black man, Bakari Sellers, who does not know the difference between immigration and slavery? Almost made me cuss. What an ignoramus. He's a representative. He was a representative. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. All right, I'll catch you Tuesday evening. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.